Morning.
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 Welcome to everyone here and in various places. Here in Eugene is a glorious spring day, and the daphne's in full bloom, and there's such a wonderful fragrance and lots of flowers pushing up. So I hope everyone has a chance to spend some time in it before the rain comes back. It's quite nice. I'd like to continue this morning talking a bit about what in Buddhism is known as the Great Vehicle. Last week I read from the Lotus Sutra, which is one of the primary teachings from the Mahayana school, or the Great Vehicle school of Buddhism. And in the Lotus Sutra there is a parable about a father who has a massive mansion. He's very, very wealthy, and his children are playing in the mansion, but the mansion is old and it is decaying and it has caught fire. And he wants to get his children to be able to escape from this predicament. But when he tells them, you're in danger, they don't listen to him. They're too busy playing. And they keep playing and playing with the things in the house. And he's trying to figure out how he's going to get them to leave through the front gate. And so he tries to explain to them why they're in danger, but they don't really listen to him. They don't really get it. And so finally he says, look, if you go through the front gate, I will give you these wonderful things. There are carts there, like chariots there in front of the gate. And some of them are pulled by goats, and some of them are pulled by deer, and some of them are pulled by oxes. And the children get very excited and they rush out the gate and escape this burning house. And there in front of the house, there's just a courtyard, and they say, "Well, where are these chariots? Where are these vehicles that you said we would get if we left?" And he gives all of the children, each of the children, a marvelous chariot, a chariot far beyond what they could have expected, and each one of them is pulled by a white ox. And this white ox is a symbol for the one vehicle, the Buddha way, the Buddha vehicle, the vehicle which shows up as many different types of vehicles. Right? So the white ox vehicle, and the Buddha can't talk about it as being the white ox vehicle within the house. That explanation doesn't make any sense to the children. So he tells them, there's this kind of vehicle. There's a vehicle that's pulled by a deer. You really like deer. So I'm going to tell you there's a vehicle that's pulled by deer. You really like goats. I'm going to tell you there's one that's pulled by goats. You really like oxes. I'm going to tell you there's one that's pulled by an ox. And catching their interest, then they will move. And it's not that he doesn't give them a vehicle. He does. He gives them this chariots, or carriages, but they are pulled by the white ox, and they're beautifully adorned, and they're massive, and they're filled with all kinds of riches. This parable is about how it is that the Buddha teaches the awakening of a Buddha. That actually it can't be taught as one thing. It has to be taught as many things. Taught as many things, the oneness of the Buddha's awakening can be expressed. If it tries to express it as oneness, there's always opposition. Right? You say, this is the one true. Then, okay, I've got my one true. And then it's always some opposition. So the multiplicity and the singularity are very important to each other. Now, I was relating this to a place that I think we are in our society. It's very, very fractured, and we hear a lot of talk about coming together, about learning to be harmonious, about seeing different paths as having some legitimacy, even if they don't totally match my own understanding of what the path is. And this has lots and lots of implications. I was saying right here in the jaws of birth and death, your positions, your oppositions, your explanations, they're not going to cut it. They're not, I mean, they will help you feel some sense of security for, say, 4 or 8 seconds, while you clutch on to your rightness. But right away, that quickly, they will also give rise to all kinds of anxieties, all kinds of sufferings that have to do with living a life that is always in oppositions, always in positions, always in explanations and arrangements. So I was encouraging the assembly to follow what resonates, to hear the invitation in what it is that resonates with you in a teaching. All right? And don't worry too much about the parts that don't resonate with you. Right? Leave those up to someone else. Let someone else resonate with those, and they can do what they want with them. But for yourself, to find the part that resonates and to follow it is to say, I am in the jaws of birth and death. So what will I rely on? Will I sit there and go, well, these ones sound right, these ones don't, one category is this, that, no. No. What resonates? And put it into action. Right? Actually actively rely on it, learn about it, let it invite you more deeply into your own being. To meet a whole that is beyond our ability to hold. This is what I'm talking about. The wholeness, the oneness of the Buddha vehicle is beyond our ability to hold, to manage, to grasp. And so it requires that we receive something partial. Right? And as we meet other beings that are on different paths, they're actually holding part of the whole for us. Even if we disagree with them, right? They are also included. And this Buddha vehicle becomes something much more profound than just having found the true thing. Right? Because the true thing always is going to have the opposition of the false thing. Now, this is really the fundamental imbalance of delusion. There's an image that's oftentimes talked about in the Buddhist teachings called a plank view. It's kind of a weird word, but once I explain it, it'll make sense. That when we're looking at the world, it's as if we have a plank, like a long plank of wood, and we're carrying it on one shoulder. Like this, and the plank is here. So when you carry that plank, you can't see this side. Right? You only see, if it's here, you only see the left side. And you turn your head, you turn your head over here to see the right side because that's where the plank was. And now you can only see that left side. You can't see that part. So whenever we're looking at things, we're always looking at them in a partial way. Actually, if you think about it, we're always in plank view. You don't need to put any wood on your side of your head. Your eyes don't reach around to the back of you, right? So you're seeing what's in front of you, but you're not seeing what's behind you. Right? And you turn your head, and now the behind is over here. It's a very simple thing, but it's interesting, it's important for us to notice it, that when we view, when we see, when we apprehend, right, not just in a visual sense, but in intellectual sense or mental sense or emotional sense, we're always seeing part. Right? We're seeing half or some part of something. We're not seeing the whole thing. That's the nature of consciousness. And in that predicament, we're quite addicted to the light. By the light, I mean when the light's on, we can see. Right? We're addicted to the forward, to what we can see, what can be gotten, what can be grabbed, what can be named, what can be held, what can be thought. We become quite addicted to that. That's what we call the world. That's what we call real. Right? But what of this whole other part of the world, which isn't there in the light? It can't be thought, it can't be seen, it can't be held. Now our stances of rightness, our stances of knowing are all in this side. They are fundamentally deluded when we hold on to them in opposition to or in total forgetfulness of all these things that we can't see. And this drives a lot of our, I don't mean just like negative things, but it drives a lot of our good intentions to make things better. I mean, we're in a rough spot right now. Don't you want things to be better? Don't you want people to wear their masks? Stop complaining about it? Don't you want there to be vaccinations? We're moving forward on that. Don't you want things to start opening up? Don't you want kids to be back in school? All of those things, these important aims that we have. Making everything good, doing the right thing. So these are all in the realm of the seen, all in the realm of the forward, all in the realm of trying to discern what is right and then to do it. Which is not essentially bad, but from a Buddhist perspective, we tend to do all of those things through delusion, right? Through only seeing half of it, only allowing half of it. And this causes problems, even amidst trying to do something good. $2.5 million deaths in a year. 500,000 in the United States. I'll say that again. 2.5 million deaths. 500,000 in the United States. My question for you today is, can we grieve? What is our lament? I'm not so interested in the solutions. They're important, but my days are filled with them. Did you catch that finally the president of this country said, let's stop? And I always love this as a Zen Buddhist when people say, let's take a moment of silence. And I'm like, okay. And I think it's, like at least 5 minutes, right? It's usually like 8 seconds or something like that. It's a little like, whoa, it was really a moment of silence. But did you notice, finally, the leader of our country said, let's have a moment. Let's at least make a small doorway for our grief. I want to ask you to spend time there. To spend time in the difficulty, not only of the deaths, but those deaths also represent a suffering that we're all part of. We're all experiencing. It's shaken us deeply. We've all lost. Not in the same way that someone who has lost a loved one to COVID-19 has lost, but we all are experiencing loss. There's something moving through our beings. Loss doesn't come in a tidy, gift-wrapped box. It wrecks you. And in that place, what you can see, your rightness, your position, your strategy, it won't really do anything about that loss. It can't. It doesn't have the capacity. It's out here, trying to keep the things that can be seen in place and forgetting about all the things back here that can't be seen. So as we move forward, right, this fundamental kind of delusion about grabbing after what it is that we can see, it sows the seeds of conflict. Even when we think we're doing the right thing, or we're planning how to do the right thing. The question I have is, can we learn, or can we rely on the part of ourself that knows how to rot? To exercise our capacity to be with the very intimate truth of our own undoing. The place where we don't get to even exactly know who we are. With our own suffering. This is what the great vehicle is asking us to pay attention to. Not to move past our suffering, to just see suffering as a thing to get beyond, but to see that our suffering, or to come to know that our suffering, is a reminder of this fundamental undoing, this fundamental loss, which moment after moment is present, and then we see in some big ways. I would venture that if we spend more time paying attention to this part, the kind of attention that we have to pay is not the attention that you can do when you're looking forward. It's not trying to figure out what my suffering is and then get it out in front of me and try to understand what it is. It's more like an intention that requires a release. It requires an acceptance. It requires a feeling, oh, there's a whole world back here that I also can't see. A whole world down through me which I can't see. A whole world expanding out into the cosmos that I can't see in the way that I see these individual things. Now there's something, I think on this level, kind of makes sense. I hope it makes sense. We've got to attend to that part of our being. But I want to expand this out a little bit. Can we face the ugliness? I don't mean just the lament of loss. I don't just mean the suffering, which can be, seen as valuable if we turn our mind towards it. But the raw ugliness of human greed, hate, and delusion. It's fierce. As we play these games of rage and blame, right, we're diverting from that ugliness again and again. I mean, I'll show my politics a little bit. Did you see who the Republicans just elected to be the head of the Republican Party in Oregon? Have you listened to him? He went and hung out with the Malheur occupiers, just from my political perspective, when I hear him speak, I'm enraged. I do not share his values. I'm going to share his way of approaching things. Now, I rarely talk about politics this directly from this seat, but the reason that I'm bringing it up is for this purpose about rage and blame, right? My blood boils. I get so angry at these things. If I let that short circuit my ability to pay attention and to be present, those things are just ways for me to avoid. For me to pretend like the ugliness isn't there. If I can turn the ugliness into my own indignation, pretty clean. Do you notice how your own indignation keeps you separated from the actuality of what's happening? Emotionally disconnected? And I'm not saying that we should try to talk ourselves into not ever being angry or thinking that that there's nobody who's wrong about anything. I'm saying exactly the opposite. I'm saying that ugliness, it's so uncomfortable to pay attention to it, right? Because of all of the difficulty of those feelings, right? Of a kind of sense of powerlessness, of hopelessness. I want to say that just like the grief that is difficult to face yet brings us a possibility for a deep renewal, that facing the ugliness that is there in the world allows us to become more intimate with the ugliness that is in my own heart, the part that wants to separate out those who are right from those who are wrong and punish those who are wrong and embrace only those that are right. So facing the ugliness is an opportunity. It's a difficult opportunity. It's a difficult opportunity to wake up to this great vehicle that the Buddha is presenting. Presenting may be the wrong word, that the Buddha woke up to and endeavors to help us wake up to. Now, it feels a little funny to talk about, such a sunny day. Remember, I started out my talk that way. It's so nice. The flowers are coming up. And I'm speaking in a kind of difficult way about darkness. Without the descent, the fundamental imbalance, this kind of partial way of looking things, it controls, it binds all the kinds of solutions that we could think of. We'd be trapped by the karma of the difficulty. We can't do anything truly creative. We just replicate the karma. We replicate the ugliness because we're unwilling or unable to see it. Right? We replicate the loss because we're unable to grieve the loss. And so we manifest it again and again and again in our life. So when I say that this is a great opportunity, it's a sunny day. There are flowers blooming. We can live that. Right? But if it just becomes the solution of what can be seen, if it becomes a pulling our attention away from, then it'll be fine. It'll be good. But in following that, I'm calling it here an addiction, we will replicate the same conflict, the same problems that created the ugliness in the first place. Compassion and wisdom, these are the wings of enlightenment. This is what we say is the path of the Buddha vehicle. Deep intimacy, a feeling, right, that comes to us as a passion. It comes to us as the fullness and richness of our life as we touch other beings and are touched by other beings. Sometimes joyfully, sometimes in difficulty. and wisdom, clear seeing, is not turning away and is not looking through and pretending like something isn't there, but its presence in its most simple and straightforward form. For this intimacy and clear seeing to be fully present, to move through us in the most profound way, the darkness and the light can't be divided. We can't just reach after what we can see and throw away what we can't, or reach out after the solution and throw away the problem, or look to the beauty and throw away the ugliness. There is a wholeness, and this is what the Buddha can't explain to his children. It can't be explained, actually, because as we explain it, we always leave one side out. That's the fundamental delusion. Right? And so in this school, this is the practice of Zazen, of meditation. We have a sense that meditation is like learning to concentrate, as if there's going to be this thing which I could see, and then I'm going to concentrate on it. I'm going to build my concentration muscles on being able to just pay attention to that thing. Now, there's some value in that. We're so distracted, just jumping around all the time. Learning to put your mind on something and just keep it there. That's a good thing to do. Right? But it's very, very limited. Actually, in seeing something, in the practice of meditation, we're endeavoring to see the total aliveness of what is in the realm of the seen, because we're giving it the freedom of what can't be seen. We're giving it the spaciousness of not being an isolated thing, but being something which is totally connected. It's totally connected because it rests in the darkness, in our inability to carve anything out as separate and cut off. So as you explore this grief, as you explore the ugliness, as you explore what it means for our own being to become undone in the various ways that shows up in your life, I want to encourage you to come back to meditation, not as a way to force your way through it, right? To find the solution, like, oh yeah, I got my mind really squeaky clean. But as an invitation into the kind of intimacy of compassion, the presence with your own being and with the collective heart of the world. And to look clearly at what is there. Clearly here meaning to see it as it is, but not as unconnected from everything else. There's a lot of joy there. I promise. There's deer, there's goats, there's oxen. Any questions or comments? Hi.
Hi. In those moments when I've been, rare moments, where I've been able to be patient and not just burst in my anger and my reaction and my rightness. It feels like there are these layers of grief and pain, and then there's love. You know, there's just this tenderness, like the ugliness. What am I so afraid of? You know, am I afraid of rotting? Am I afraid of death? Am I afraid of aloneness? If so, then my phobia is creating what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the that's the point, is that it's that wheel right at the center which keeps replicating itself, and we even in our endeavor to find a solution, we replicate the same qualities of our phobia in whatever my solution is. And I want to be really clear. I don't mean this in any way to say that we shouldn't fight for what we believe in, but fighting for what we believe in means something much richer than being right. It means something much more profound than being right. It actually means being you, being whole and upright and present, right? And the courage that comes from that place allows a different possibility than just the replication of the problem. So I think love, courage, freedom, they're all right there in the capacity to encounter what is very difficult. Right.
So I'm thinking about the cognitive dissonance. I'm impacted by the ugliness for the most part through some abstraction, not in my face. I live on a wonderful street of neighbors. I have here, I have everyone here over there on the screen, and these fantastic great-grandsons who, all magic. And then, but I pay attention, I'm aware. So this sets up, I don't know, some ongoing going around. And then I have at least one son who's confronted in a much more direct way by people who, probably from his point of view, either express actively or inactively support consciously what we would think of as the ugliness. And so then I think about how much easier it is, or it seems so, when I listen and accept the truth of what you're saying. So I wonder about this other place where it's, and I've been in those places, but not for a long time. So I just wonder about that.
What do you wonder?
Well, I keep hearing this refrain, and I don't even know if it's accurate.
Yeah.
Some supposed quote of the Dalai Lama who said, "China took everything, they took Tibet, but they can't take my mind." So that's the refrain I hear about that situation. Well, I wonder how to stand in close to the ugliness and not partake of it.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly what I'm pointing at today. Is that if we're not let's see, maybe there's 3 things I want to say. If we're convinced we're right, we're not. If we can't feel any pain, we're definitely ignoring something. And if we're honest about wanting to find a solution to these problems, we're going to have to give something up. And that thing that we have to give up is our self-grasping. And so we may be in a more acute place in terms of feeling pressed up against the political struggle, or if we're a person who's living in a more in a oppressed position within society, within the world. There may be places where this becomes much more acute, and I think as it becomes more acute, it becomes even more. The gravity of the situation makes it even more important to be able to find that deep river of pain. To realize that we don't have to find a total solution. We have to risk what we can risk right where we are, and move forward one, even if we don't know politically what the solution would be, or societally what the solution should be. So in a way, I think there's even more challenge in this when we're not in as acute of a situation, because we can divert so easily.
Right.
And part of the reason I want to talk about this today is because this is just rampant in our community.
Right.
I mean the community of Budai Temple, I mean the community of Eugene, I mean the community of the United States, that when we talk about coming together or trying to understand more deeply what it would mean to have some kind of unification as a society, I see very little that talks about this. It's not even that sophisticated. It's basic principle. It's like a basic principle of being a human and working with other humans. But it seems to have disappeared from the way it is that we think and talk about things. So I think we all have to really double down on that work if we're going to find healing. And it won't come through, there's no pill, right? There's no magic pill. It will come through a big shift in people's minds. And I'm hopeful.
Joe?
Hi.
I have a question, Moxie. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen in myself, and also in patients I work with and friends, and in people involved in political action, that when things become painful or tense, it seems like people feel sad and immobilized by that sadness. And I think that the anger that they bring to a situation can catalyze them to move out of this kind of state in which they feel like they've been kind of paved over and like really oppressed and flattened down by all kinds of structural oppression and by individual people. And so I just wonder a couple of things. I think of anger as sometimes as like a form of self-medication, and I think it's better than feeling like we're disintegrating and it doesn't matter what happens to us, and that we should let other people just vent endlessly these toxic things. So I think it's helpful, and sometimes I'm happy for my patients when they get angry with me because I'm not doing what they want, because it means that at least they're still kind of integrated and they have a sense of self-protection, even if I don't think it's very skillful.
Yeah.
So I value that anger response as like a way of like getting off the floor, if you know what I mean. And I do also wonder I wonder when we start to feel that anger, is there some kind of a verbal way of engaging the situation that makes it manageable? Because in some psychology research, when people don't label their thoughts and feelings, they end up with a chronically high stress level, and they're more prone to depression and anxiety and substance use disorders and suicidality. And so because this feeling kind of ends up being kind of like this big storm cloud that's all over the place. I wonder how to match Zen practice with psychology and how to use words to label things, but also not to believe too much in our own assessment of what's going on. That's a lot, but what do you think?
I think we have to learn to embrace the lament, that the grief that is there under, within the anger, within the, I like the image you gave, being paved over. There's a great sorrow there. And I don't mean that we should replace the anger with sorrow, but I mean that that the anger is important, and the sorrow is fundamental. And that learning more fully how to encounter that sorrow, how to be present. The thing that's difficult about sorrow is it's one of these things that's in the dark. It doesn't have an edge. Anger also doesn't have an edge, but it kind of pushes out and burns things as it explores its lack of an edge. And we can have a sense of how things feel really clear within anger. This is this way, and it is boundless, it is edgeless, and it burns these other things, but it gives us the sense of this kind of clarity. Whereas sorrow invites us into something which feels it has no edge. That what you're saying about its danger of just becoming all-consuming and our stress levels going up. This is why we need the lament. This is why we need to actively pay attention to grief. We need to actively pay attention to our own dissolution, our own undoing. We have to pay attention to the ugliness, because then it has a place within the whole, as opposed to it trying to become the total universal. So within meditation, this is something that we're doing all the time. To know ourselves more deeply isn't just to identify little pieces of ourself, right? But it is also that there are little pieces of myself that come forward with more clarity. I can see them more clearly because I've put them in the context of the scene, not having to block out what can't be seen. The ambiguity doesn't have to destroy the particular. Right? And we work with that right directly in meditation, that there are feelings and thoughts that come up. They're present. Right? But I don't need to shut them down for them to be liberated. I also don't have to solve them, which is one of the ways that I shut them down. So I think this is a very connected in that way. It takes it takes a kind of courage to go to that level of experience and that level of encounter with ourselves and with other people, which this less subtle way is very attractive, much in the way of like potato chips. There's fat and salt. And we go, yum, 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 yum. Potato chips are great. I love potato chips. But I don't want to live on potato chips, right? I want a little bit. And I think that's what we've done in many of these cases, is we're just spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, we've gone to the potato chip level. And it's not we haven't found the deep nourishment. So I guess I would finish by saying that it is my intention for us next week to have a ceremony which is organized around a lament. around grieving for primarily COVID-19, but the whole milieu that we find ourselves in as a whole. And so more of that will come out in the digest this week. And to ritually enact is one of the tools, one of the approaches. I don't like either of those words. One of the truths of what it means to be sincere in our living out the Buddha way. It's not an artifice. It's not a trick. It's not a technique. That's not what ritual is. It is an actual enacting of, in this case, grief. So I hope people are able to attend that next week. I have a little thinking to do about how you offer incense through the internet, but I have a few ideas. So thank you all.